Hello guys, welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Washington Capitals Round 2 playoff series. Now let's talk about the games before I get too ahead of myself. In Game 1, the Penguins came out strong, winning 3-2 against the Washington Capitals. It was a good game. It was a close game throughout, and it was a physical game too. Probably one of the more physical games of the series, but there's a lot of action. But 3-2 Pittsburgh, they ended up getting Game 1, which was crucial for them throughout the rest of the series. But Game 1, it was a close game, but the Penguins were able to get it through, and it was a close game, but Washington Capitals were not able to get it, with the Pittsburgh Penguins winning it in the Game 1, which, of course, was very important for them. But the Capitals did need an answer. They didn't need an answer to go into Game 2. We didn't need to go down 2-0 against the Penguins. That was not going to be good for them. And they came out strong. A 4-1 victory for the Washington Capitals. They played pretty well, pretty solid. It was a close game, but again, the Capitals were able to get it off. And it was a little bit more spread out game than usual, but again, it was a close game. It was a fun game to watch. And of course, the series has been having great games to watch. And it seems like almost every single game is an amazing one. And it was a physical game. It was a fun one. A lot of teams got a lot of chances. Pittsburgh Penguins had a lot of chances there to score, but did not get it through. And it seemed like the Washington Capitals were the better team there, and they definitely deserved to win that game. 4-1. The Capitals needed that game, and they got it to tie the series there 1-1. Then we go into Game 3. Both teams needed this win. The series was tied at that point, but the Washington Capitals were able to get it out. 4-3 win for them. That was a very, very good win for them, and one that they really needed. Both teams needed this win to get up 2-1 in the series, but the Washington Capitals were able to get it 2-1. That was a crucial game for both teams. Of course, Washington won that game and would end up winning the series, but just that, taking the lead for Washington Capitals, I think was very, very important for them. Then we go into Game 4, where the Pittsburgh Penguins answered back. A 3-1 victory for them. It was a close game, though. It was right down the wire, but the Penguins were able to clutch it out and needed that game. They needed it. It was at home, and they needed that game. They did not want to go down 3-1, and the Washington Capitals were not able to get it done. And then at that point, it was a tied series 2-2. The Pittsburgh Penguins were able to get that win. Probably a must-win game for them, as it really comes. I mean, Pittsburgh Penguins needed to not go down 3-1, and they did not, but the series, at least from then on, was tied 2-2. And it's worth noting at that point, on the same day as that game, Tom Wilson was suspended 3 games. Now I'm not going to go into it too in depth because I already made a video on that a couple of days ago. But in Game 3, of course, he had the hit on Aston Reese. Of course, Aston Reese had a broken jaw and could not play for the rest of the series and for the rest of the playoffs, even if the Pittsburgh Penguins advanced. But in that Game 3, that's when the hit happened. But on the same day as the Game 4, that's when Tom Wilson was suspended 3 games. So without Tom Wilson for the rest of the series, Washington Capitals, I feel, experienced some of that, fatigue after it, because Tom Wilson, I think, helped their offense pretty goodly. And I think that Tom Wilson was a good part of that offense and underrated in that respect, so I feel like they were kind of a little bit more weak throughout the rest of the series. So in Game 5, of course, the series tied. Both teams needed this win. Once again, kind of like in Game 3, both teams needed this win. Washington Capitals come out and play strong. A 6-3 victory for them, and their offense looked very good until the last minute. I mean, it seemed like the Washington Capitals were playing very well. The Pittsburgh Penguins just weren't able to keep up, and that was a game that both teams needed. Washington was able to clutch out, like in Game 3 again, but their offense looked great, and it seemed like they missed Tom Wilson too much, and for that game, it felt like it was pretty good, and from then on, it was pretty nice. And from the 6 goals, they looked pretty good. The Pittsburgh Penguins looked decent offensively, but not good enough, and both goaltenders really dropped the ball, even though Holtby had a pretty good game there. And then the elusive Game 6 in Pittsburgh. Now, I fully expected the Pittsburgh Penguins to win this game. Now, I think they did look like the better team. It was a pretty even game throughout, but Pittsburgh, I think, had the slight edge there. But, I mean, it was a ridiculous game. I thought that Pittsburgh was going to win. I thought the Washington Capitals had no chance of winning. It was Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. I thought that the home ice fans would give something, but apparently not. It was an amazing game, though. Of course, I streamed it. For you guys that were there, you'll know what I'm talking about, but it was a great game to watch. It was a fun game, and I really couldn't have asked for a better game. Even in the first period, it wasn't fantastic, but from the second period onwards, it was amazing, and it was just a fantastic game to watch. There was opportunities from both sides. It was a goaltender do a little bit. Defenses were pretty good, and it just seemed like a fairly, very good all-around hockey game, and from then on, it was fantastic. It was just a 1-1 game. It was great going into overtime, and at that time, it was suspenseful. And you know what happens in overtime. The Caps rushed off the ice, passes right to Kuznetsov, who is wide open. Chris Letang lets him go. He goes on the breakaway and scores on Murray. And the Capitals, for the first time in Washington Ovechkin's career, are going to the 3rd round. That whole play was amazing. It was electric, and from that point, it was just an amazing moment. And he's doing the dirty bird, and I don't really usually like that. I don't really usually like the celebrations like that, but I learned today that apparently his daughter likes it, so I'm not going to harp on it anymore, because obviously, if your daughter likes it, he's going to keep doing it, and she should have enjoyed that. Kuznetsov getting the game-winning goal. I would have loved to see Ovechkin get it, but Kuznetsov is still great too, and he finally gets redemption against Pittsburgh Penguins again, and Ovechkin, again, for the first time in his career, is getting past Crosby and getting past the Pittsburgh Penguins to advance to round 3, where it's really uncharted territory. But a 2-1 victory, and it was a classic game. I think it'll go down as one of the best playoff games from this season. An amazing game. Of course, that Kuznetsov was the cherry on top. And just a great goal to a great game, and the end to a great game. And it was fantastic. And overall, the series was great. It seemed like Washington Capitals were the better team, so they definitely deserve that. But overall, it was a fantastic series to watch. I think it was one of the best series overall in these playoffs. It always is. Pittsburgh versus Washington is always one of the best, and it goes down as that as well. The goaltenders were good as well. The defenses were shaky, but for Washington, I feel like they were the better team, and they probably deserve to win this series. They have over the last couple of seasons, but the Pittsburgh Penguins would usually jump over them and take advantage of them. But this time, the Washington Capitals are taking the last laugh. Now, the Washington Capitals could have never done it without Holtby's performance, in my opinion. He had a .921 save percentage, and he's never really been the guy at fault there for the Washington Capitals' failures. But I've seen some people peg it on in the last couple of years, and I just want to say he is fantastic, and he has been in the playoffs for the longest time. And just that the team around him has kind of crumbled, but a .921 save percentage in these playoffs against a Pittsburgh Penguins team who pretty much specializes in offense right now, and that's super impressive. He has a fantastic series, and I think there was a stat. 5-on-5 high chance or high danger opportunities, high danger shots, something like that. He had like a .925 save percentage. He was ridiculous. He had an amazing season, and an amazing playoff so far. And he's going to go to the Eastern Conference Final, and that's great for him. He definitely deserves to be that at least one time in his career. And my dude Nathan Walker being the first Australian-born player to play a game in the playoffs, and the first Australian-born player to get a point, setting records. I love the guy, and I wish him all the success and a great game he played, as well as a lot of Capitals players. And Ovechkin, I'm just gonna say this right now, he played like a captain. Now, I've never been on the side that'll say, Ovi should be removed the captaincy. I don't believe that. I don't think he's the best captain out there. I don't think he should be removed from that. I still think he's the heart and soul of that team. He deserves that captaincy, and he's been there forever. I still think that he deserves it, and he's already showed it in these playoffs. The one thing that showed me, the one play that showed me that he's captain caliber I think it was in Game 5 or Game 3. It was either in Game 5. I think it was in Game 5. It was a great game. That game was fantastic, and it was down to the wire. But I think it was 3-3, and Ovechkin and Vrana are on 2-1-1. Ovechkin kind of clears the defenseman. He's coming down the rush. He clears it, makes some room for Vrana, but guess what? He fakes the shot. He goes around, and he passes it to Vrana, who scores. That is the one play that showed me he is captain caliber. He is proving the doubters wrong. He passed it for a game winner. He's passing. He's playing some better defense. He is still a liability, but he isn't as much of a liability. He played decent defense in this series. He was physical at points. He's had one of his best playoffs of his career. And if you think that he should be removed from the captaincy, I just don't believe it. He had his best playoff performance, at least in this series, I believe, of his career. He's just been a lot better all around throughout the season, and especially in these playoffs. I've been really impressed with his play, of just the all-around ability that he's shown, and the captaincy. I think he fully deserves that. From what he's done in this series, I think that he definitely deserves to keep it, and I don't think that he really should have removed it a bit anyways. I think that he's definitely proven the doubters wrong, especially in these playoffs. But again, Washington getting past the third round for the first time in so many years. I think it was 1994 when they got past Pittsburgh Penguins and on to round 3, and that's more than 20 years, so obviously it's been a big drought for Washington, and they finally got it done against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I've seen so many happy Washington Capitals fans, and I'm just happy for them, because they definitely deserved this at this point. And the Pittsburgh Penguins are officially eliminated from the playoffs. You know what that means. Since the first time since 2008, we'll see a different Stanley Cup winner. Now, you might want to call Boston that, but I'm going to prove it. It's either been Boston, LA, Chicago, or Pittsburgh since 2008. We're going to finally get somebody different. And that's why a lot of people have been rooting for Washington in the series, and why I've liked Washington for a long time. And just rooting against Pittsburgh, it's not so much that I like Washington, it's more like I'm rooting against Pittsburgh. I'm not a big fan of Pittsburgh. I don't hate them, but I don't really necessarily like them. And I think it was about time that we finally see somebody else get up the crown, and finally somebody else, a different team, raise that Stanley Cup. And that's just what got me so excited, man. We're going to see somebody different, somebody that we haven't seen before. The Capitals, never been to the Stanley Cup for a long, long time. Vegas Golden Knights, you had Tampa Bay Lightning, you have the Winnipeg Jets, you have the Nashville Predators. You know, the closest thing we can have to a samey Stanley Cup is pretty much like Nashville and Tampa Bay. And even then, we haven't seen Tampa Bay sit in a few years now. Nashville was last year. That's as samey as it gets, which gets me super, super excited. But for Washington, the curse is finally lifted. The curse, we say, as they finally get past Pittsburgh Penguins, their nemesis, their kryptonite, their enemy for all these years, and it's just great to see they finally got over the hump at least one of these times. But for Pittsburgh, their offense was pretty much carried by Crosby and Gensel. Both of those guys had great series, and they kept continuing their playoff success. They've been both fantastic in these playoffs, and you certainly can't put the blame on them. They performed fantastic. Letang's defense, although he had some offense, was not good at all. Of course, he gave up the breakaway basically to Kuznetsov for the winning goal in overtime in Game 6, and obviously that was shining the spotlight on him, but overall he didn't have that great of a series defensively, which is to be expected. He's not that kind of guy. He's the offensive guy, but still you'd like a little bit better from him. I was not impressed at all with Derek Brassard. He didn't play all that great in this series, only 1 point in these series, and he didn't look all that great. He did do what he needed to do. He played decent defensively. He got the face-off wins, but other than that, he wasn't all too great offensively. I just didn't see what he somewhat usually brings from on the ice, and he just wasn't the same quite as he usually was. I mean, Derek Brassard has been one of the best playoff performers for the past couple of years, and he just hasn't shown that in these playoffs. He's been pretty disappointing, pretty mildly disappointing. And I don't think you should entirely blame Murray. I mean, probably shouldn't have made that save on Kuznetsov, and he didn't, but he was still good in this series. I felt like he was still pretty decent. Of course, that glove hand is still a problem for him, but I still think that it wasn't the problem. He had quite a few good games and some great saves, and he wasn't the problem. He played relatively good. Wasn't 2016 and 2017 good, but still good enough. But the Pittsburgh Penguins defense was letting him go quite a bit. But might as well put my prediction here. Of course, everybody pretty much had them, both Washington and Pittsburgh, facing off again in the second round. I had, for some reason, I don't know why I predicted this, but Washington in 5 games. I don't know why I predicted 5 games. That was a little bit too, I don't know, jumping the gun, but I don't know. I was close. I was 1 game off, and Washington Capitals actually got someone going, which is great to see. And I predicted that they'd get past the Pittsburgh Penguins in the second round, so I guess I'll take it. I also predicted Tampa versus Washington in the Eastern Conference Finals, so I think I'm getting pretty right here. My East, at least Eastern Conference rise, is looking pretty good, but if Nashville wins Game 7 tonight, I'm having my conference finals, both West and East, completely correct. Which, for me, prediction-wise, is usually not very good, but apparently it's doing pretty decent. But man, I'm going to miss this series. This is a great one to cover and a great one to watch. A fantastic one, and it probably will go down as probably one of the best, if not the best, series from these playoffs. And it's just an instant classic. Game 6 was amazing, and it was overall just a fantastic series to watch. Really couldn't ask for anything better. But that is going to be it for today, guys. Guys, enjoy it. Make sure you like. Guys, enjoy it. Make sure you subscribe. Tell me down below what you thought of this series, what you thought of Ovi advancing to round 3 for the first time. Make sure you share with your friends, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.